I'm Adam from the Army Painter, and today we are going to be showing you how to paint up Wolf Grey Power Armor. I've gotten a lot of requests on our brand new Facebook group called the Hobby Brigade. The Hobby Brigade is a new group where you can share and post your hobby progress, set your hobby goals, and we'll be there along with the rest of the hobby, painting, and wargaming communities to help you achieve them. I've received tons of questions on how to quickly paint large swaths of models, and the Army Painter color primer system is one great way to do this. In fact, many years ago, when we pioneered this new product range, we released some simple painting guides. So let's take a look at this one that we put together over a decade ago. We're gonna follow along these same principles with this tutorial, but we're gonna mix in some new techniques, some new modern techniques. These painting guides were super handy because they showed us how to use the Army Painter system from color primer, spray, all the way through to highlighting. These are the paints that you're going to need for this Wolf Grey Armour tutorial. You'll see that we have color primers, Warpaints, and of course, Quickshades. This is a great opportunity for us to showcase our color primer sprays, which are a 2-in-1 primer and spray, something that we actually pioneered over a decade ago. This is a great way to save loads of time at the hobby desk and protect those models with a true primer base coat. Today, we're going to use our color primer spray in combination with the airbrushing technique and our brand new airbrush medium. With your color primer, make sure that you give it a good shake and spray in a very well ventilated area. You're gonna wanna spray at a distance of no further than 20 centimeters or 8 inches. When you're finished, turn the can upside down and spray until the pigment stops coming out of the nozzle. We're gonna mix 1 part airbrush medium to 2 parts war paint. Of course, you can skew this up or down depending on the pressure that you're spraying, but 1 to 2 parts is definitely a good starting point when you're using our brand new airbrush medium with our war paints. Make sure you stir that up, and you want to achieve a nice milky consistency, almost like skim milk. Then we're gonna go ahead, and you can see that we've already primed the model with Wolf Grey, and with Fog Grey through the airbrush, we're just going to give it a very subtle top-down highlight. We're angling the airbrush from the top down and hitting those areas, those raised areas that light would catch, like the backs of the boots, the tops of the shoulder pads, and the backs of the legs, as you can see here, and of course, just that crown on the helmet as you saw. And just like that, we have a nice smooth highlight on the model. Once we finished off our airbrush highlight, we're going to add some depth and shading to the model using a wash. For this, we're going to be using Quickshade Blue Tone and our Quickshade Wash Mixing Medium. I've applied some Quickshade Wash Mixing Medium to my wet palette here. This is a great way to dilute your washes, and it allows you to add a more subtle wash across the model and also build up layers of the wash to achieve the right effect that you want to. So once you apply your Quickshade Wash Mixing Medium and your blue tone to the palette, you're gonna give this a good mixing with an old brush here. Make sure you get those pigments perfectly distributed throughout that Quickshade Wash Mixing Medium. Once you're finished, we're just going to apply this all over the model. We're gonna start here right on the chest piece, and you can see that the subtle pigment is adding some depth and contrast, a little bit of shading to the model. We're gonna work this all over the model. I like to start at the top of the model where I can and work my way down, allow that wash to work its way into the recesses of the model. As you can see here on the shoulder pad, I start at the top and just pull that wash that we created down into the recesses, allowing it to settle into the little nooks and crannies on the model. We're gonna apply this all over the model, just like here on the knee pad and the leg of our Marine model here. We're just gonna make sure that we apply this, get good coverage across the entirety of the model. You want to avoid letting the wash pool up. If you do thin it down with the Quickshade Wash Mixing Medium, it does help it flow a little bit better over the flatter areas of the model because it does thin it down a little bit. But if it does begin to pool up in any areas, just take your brush and make sure you wick it away and into the recesses of the model. Once you've applied the wash all over the entirety of the model, you're going to allow it to dry for 20 to 30 minutes. I went ahead and painted all of the other bits and details on the model, just very briefly blocked it in to give the model a more finished appearance for the duration of this tutorial. Now I've thinned down a bit of fog gray on my wet palette, and with a character brush here, I'm just going to trace an edge highlight across the raised areas of the model. We're just picking out the details on the model, like here on the belt loop. Just gonna go ahead and use the very tip of my brush to go ahead and trace this along the edges of the model. I've thinned it down with a bit of clean water, and this gives me superior control, and it also helps to stay on the bristles of the brush a bit longer so I don't have to keep going back to my palette. Very carefully here, with a little bit of patience and a steady hand, I'm just tracing in these details and this initial highlight with my detail brush. When applying an airbrush highlight, I always like to go back with a brush to draw in my initial highlight with that same color. It really helps to tie in and give a realistic lighting effect on the model. Going back to the wet palette, this time with Gorgon Hide, I'm making sure I get this really thin so I have superior control of this highlight on the brush. And just inside the initial highlight that we made with Fog Gray, and just draw in a smaller highlight with that Gorgon Hide. This is the perfect highlight color for Wolf Grey and Fog Gray because it carries some very similar pigments. It's just a brighter pigment, a lighter pigment. It's perfect for highlighting those colors. Very carefully here, I'm just finding all of the areas that I previously highlighted, like here on the brow and the bridge of the helmet and under the eyes, and I'm just tracing in a nice, simple, clean highlight in these areas. So just go around the model and find the most raised areas. We're going to focus on just the topmost areas to apply this final extreme highlight. Because I've thinned the paint, so you can see I messed up just a little bit. I painted just a little bit outside of the lines. Because it's nice and thinned down on your wet palette, it's very easy to wipe away without leaving any traces. So we're going to continue this process around the rest of the model, finding those extreme angles and edges on the model and applying this Gorgon Hide. Sometimes, like you could see there on the back plate there and on the bottom of the boots here, you can just take the paint on the side of the brush and just trace the edge of the brush along those edges to apply that highlight. Sometimes, however, you will need to be very precise while you are painting and drawing those highlights in, like right here on the back of the calf here. Again, you can trace the edges of the shoulder pad. This is a great area on the model to showcase this little technique with thin down paint. You just trace it on the side and then carefully go back and pull your highlight into the other areas like so. I get asked all the time, Adam, how do you apply your chipping to the model? Well, it's actually very simple. It's not difficult at all. I take my final highlight color, in this case Gorgon Hide, and I just add some sporadic dots on the model and maybe pull some scratch marks like you can see here on the chest plate of this marine model with that highlight color. Then I go back with a darker color. In this case, I'm going to be using oak brown. You could use a black, a dark gray, or even a copper material to make it look like metal is showing through. And just inside those areas, I apply that highlight. You can see that chipping effect here on the helmet, the chest plate, and the backpack. It's a really neat and nifty effect and very simple to pull off. This is our finished model. I think he turned out really great. And as you can see, the color primers saved us loads of time in painting up this model to a really great standard. When used in combination with our Warpaints and our Quickshade washes, painting Wolf Grey Armour has never been easier. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial as much as I enjoyed painting up this Wolf Grey model for you in the studio today. These same techniques could be applied across power armor or any other type of model that you might be painting, ranging from sci-fi to fantasy and even historical models. Remember, the magic in miniature painting is that it can be as simple or as challenging as you'd like it to be, but with the right techniques, you are sure to achieve some great results. We'll see you next time.